Hey, work smart, not hard, baby. Fuck. If you work smart, let's say you put in your material or your videos in, fuck, people like it. Fuck, baby. And you get sponsorship, fuck, and people like it. It you get residuals coming in through sponsorships, baby. Fuck. Fucking work smart, not hard, baby. Fuck. You don't want to end up with those people working a 9 to 5 job, baby, and get tired all the time, baby. Fuck. If you work smart, you don't have to work, baby. No work, but you get free money in, baby. Fuck. Residual checks. It's called residuals, baby. That's what I called free money, baby. Free money. Fuck, baby. Fuck.
The Sock Jig Sneaker Podcast. Listen closely for my very slight Canadian accent. Welcome to the Sock Jig Sneaker Podcast. I am Sock Jig. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at SockJig. First off, thank you to everyone who gave feedback on my previous State of the Game address. I really appreciate it. If you want to give me feedback, one of the best ways is to go rate my podcast 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. I don't ask for much, so that is a great place to say something. It gets the podcast out there. If someone is searching like sneaker podcasts, they'll find this podcast, for example. Then that last podcast, State of the Game, that idea came from an old Conan O'Brien bit that he used to do on his late night show at 12:30, and my original plan was to drop it around the same time that Joe Biden would do his State of the Union address. But then later I found out that a US president doesn't really have to do one in his first year because he does an inauguration address. So, yeah, the more you know. That podcast really did take me a while to put together. I had all these pieces and fragments I wanted to get out there. It was a matter of organizing it into this outline and kind of processing it in my head and then refining. And then finally recording and editing. So thanks to all my friends who I bounced ideas off. They probably heard me talk about some of that stuff for months. But for this podcast, I want to talk about the Kobe and Nike deal ending. The Maniere Jordan 3 drop this week. We have the triumphant return of the Sneaker Guy of the Week. And finally, I asked for some voicemails, so I respond to some audience questions, including one about StockX sending Scout cease and desist. But first, on feet and pickups. On feet lately, it's been nicer weather here, so I've been wearing more Prestos. I was wearing the Presto Cement White Safari sneakers, and also wore the Lightning ones recently. A couple days ago, I was wearing an Adidas track pants and Adidas mask and jacket as well too, so I figured I should pull out some black Adidas sneakers, and I have these Stan Smith Meta sneakers that I really like that have this zipper along the side. I don't know, I just appreciate a shoe with a zipper on it. For pickups, I picked up both the Bacons and the Clot Air Max ones, and the Bacon one I'm okay with. I didn't really, if I missed out, I was okay with it, but I got access to it, so I was like, sure, I'll take it. And in hand, there's some quality issues on mine. It's not like blue pen marks or anything. It's just some red lines that look like marbling. The Clot Air Max one, I was more excited for in pictures, but in hand, I don't know. It's a little rough. The padding is basically all removed on it. I wear a size, my perfect Air Max 1 size is a 12.5, but I usually wear 12 because it's easier to get. So these ones fit really big because all the padding's removed. So ironically, because they fit big and I got a size 12, they actually fit all right on me. I got the Club 58 SB Dunks on a Premiere raffle, the baby blue ones. I got both 550s from the Aimé Leon d'Or VIP early raffle because I had bought the 1300s. So, it seems like the red one's going to stores, but the green one is exclusive. Really, I don't care about 550s because that Hidden New York guy promotes them and, fuck that guy. I got the Awake Club C's, the snakeskin ones, because I'm the originator of Bach Bros, hashtag Bach Bros. What else? I got the taupe blue Yeezys. I woke up and they were just sitting on Adidas Canada. It didn't seem like people were going after them, but I had a feeling they would flip because if I thought the shoe was cool and they look pretty limited, I'm pretty sure someone else out there thinks they're cool. So I bought a couple size 11, size 10s, whatever the biggest sizes that were left, and just flipped them. And sure enough, they're selling pretty good, but they were just sitting on Adidas Canada. I got both foam runners as well too, but really I just tried them on and put them back in the box. Once my Adidas Cloud Foam slides give out, I'll probably replace them with the foam runners and see how it goes. But otherwise, there's been a lot of sneakers I've missed recently, and I've just kind of moved on. The Raging Bulls, I missed out on those, but a super hyper red shoe is okay to miss out on, I think. They're not exactly easy to wear. Both Jordan 1s that released recently, the UNC one, the Hyper Royal one, I missed in those. They barely released in Canada. Foot Locker CA is not really an option. I tried on Livestock for the UNC ones, and I missed. And the Hyper Royals were basically just raffle here. Even the neutral gray one, I missed out on, and then resales like 500. It's like, do I really want to go out there and buy a shoe that I know I'm not going to wear right this minute, even though I think the shoe is really nice? Just forget about the shoe is my mantra these days. Missing out on any one shoe doesn't really affect me that much. And if it did, I would just buy it on resale. So the big news of the day was that Vanessa Bryant and the Kobe Bryant estate has elected not to renew their partnership with Nike. So according to Nick DiPaola of ESPN, the Kobe Bryant estate had grown frustrated with Nike limiting the availability of Kobe products during his retirement and after his January 2020 death in a helicopter crash. Another quote here: there was frustration with the lack of availability of Kobe footwear in kid sizes, according to sources. And Nick also says in there, Nike, sources said, had presented an extension offer that was not in line with the expectations of an ongoing lifetime structure, similar to Nike contracts held by both Michael Jordan and LeBron James. The story was first broken by Brendan Dunn of Complex at around 4:30 Pacific time. Around 25, as an aside here, around 25 minutes later is when Nick DiPaola tweeted that, hey, at 6:36 a.m. today, I received a text that Vanessa Bryant did not renew the contract. I thought it was hilarious that he needed to, put that in there, that he actually heard the news earlier in the day. But anyways, back to the story. In the Brendan Dunn first article, Complex one, there was a quote in there that sources tell Complex that after his retirement and before his death, sales for Bryant's Nike shoes were flagging, meaning they were going down. Bryant, I'm quoting again, Bryant, they say, was a low priority at Nike's basketball division at the time, his shoes not warranting the marketing attention the brand was giving its active NBA players with signature lines like Giannis and KD, Kyrie, and LeBron. So when I saw this, my first thoughts were, maybe this is a negotiating tactic, and, you got to be willing to show that you can walk away from the table. Like when you're at a dealership and you're buying a car. Eventually, maybe they'll get back to the table and work out a deal. But my other thought was, Vanessa probably wanted Kobe's to be more available, and Nike said, nah, you can't do it. That was how I tweeted it as a play on just do it. So let's break this down at each point and kind of stop and ask why. What is Nike's intention, or what was Nike thinking here? And this is all just me speculating. There is no spokesman from Nike who's going to tell us any of this kind of stuff. I don't know if it's going to leak in sources said kind of stuff, but for now, you get my armchair analysis. The first topic, of course, is limiting product. Nike is basically saying they don't want Kobe's for everyone. Nike's saying, fuck your couch. You just know that there's some evil Nike executive out there saying, you say you want GRs, but you really don't. Only I know what you guys want, and that's limited product. And looking back at this now, Nike probably didn't increase the stock after Kobe's death because they didn't have a long-term contract in place. The contract was expiring in April, so why make a large investment in a big Kobe GR when there's nothing long-term in place? Certainly, it's not for sentimental reasons that maybe the fans really, really want this. That is of no concern to Nike yet, apparently. Or allegedly. But what if they don't think Kobe's would work as a GR at all long term? Let's put a pause on that and get back to that point a little bit later. the other point that was said was the Kobe shoes the sales were going down before his death when he was not an active player. In the 2019-2020 season, his shoe was the most popular shoe worn by NBA players. But the season started in October 2019 when Kobe was alive, and Kobe died very early 2020, and then a lot of players wore his shoes as a tribute to him. But does being an active player move more product? For LeBron's, I'm not Matt Powell here, but for LeBron's, it doesn't seem like they move because of the product itself. Those shoes are tanks. For Kyrie's, they seem to do because they're cheap. Maybe the Giannis shoes do as well because they're cheap. But it's such the world we're in right now, there's very little youth basketball even played right now. So whatever performance basketball sales state is at right now, it's nothing what it once was. That leads to the other issue here is that the family wanted the product more available in kid sizes. The mainline product doesn't seem to be available in GS sizes at all. Maybe the Mamba Furies and those kind of secondary, third line shoes are available in GS sizes. Kyrie's, like I said, do really well because they're cheap and available. And it's the same shoe that Kyrie wears on court. So if we stop to ask why wouldn't Nike want to make Kobe's available in kid sizes, is it to protect active player lines like Kyrie's? Like they want kids to wear the Kyrie shoes because Kyrie's an active player and he's someone you can see on screen and relate to? Or, it's horrible to think, but do they think kids won't connect to Kobe because he's no longer with us? Maybe this current generation of kids would want Kobe's because, all of us we're fans of Kobe's and we would want our kids to wear Kobe's. But what about the kid born today who's going to start playing basketball in 2030 or 2040? Will that kid want Kobe's? This sounds kind of cold, but don't think that Nike hasn't considered this. If I've been able to get to this point as an armchair analyst named after a sock, then surely a Nike executive has thought the same thing. We don't know Nike's side. Maybe Vanessa wanted too much money. But, Maverick Carter once told GQ that LeBron's lifetime deal is worth $1 billion. So Nike values LeBron as someone they want to have around for a long time. Actions tell you what people think and what companies think. Just like how they didn't make Kobe's for everyone. Like they don't want, that's what the other thing, that's the main thing that's applied here. They don't care about Kobe's for everyone. If there's ever a chance to be consumer friendly, it seems like Nike refuses to be most of the time. And the other one, the more heartbreaking one, is that it's possible Nike doesn't view Kobe as a long-term product mover because he's no longer with us. And I've said this numerous times on the podcast before. Corporations don't love you. They can't be sentimental. All those amazing Nike ads that make you feel so good, those are all performative. You feel something, they don't feel anything. The guy who, produced the video, he probably feels something, or the woman in the video, they feel something. But they could be gone the next day. The company's still there, they're not going to feel anything. You can love a company all you want, they can't love you back. Only people can love you back. So, Nike is showing us that it's not important to them to have Kobe Bryant under a lifetime, maybe lifetime is the wrong word or phrase here. I think in the ESPN article, they had lifetime in quotes. So, or let's just say a legacy deal. Maybe they would, but, not at the value of, supposedly $1 billion of LeBron or billions of dollars of Michael Jordan. Vanessa Bryant is free to negotiate with other brands like Adidas. And Kobe, of course, had shoes with Adidas. But whenever Kobe was ever interviewed, he would barely even say Adidas' name. He would always just refuse. He'd always just call them the other company. And really, some of those shoes are just awful, like those toaster ones. But some of them were decent. So Adidas does seem to give collaborators and partners much more freedom. So I wouldn't exactly rule it out, even though my first thoughts was, nah, I don't see it happening. Even if it does feel wrong. Vanessa's only goal here is to preserve Kobe Bryant's legacy. That is her long-term goal, even if it's never going to be Nike's long-term goal. You know, it's just kind of sad. I feel sad for the whole thing. Um, it's sad that Nike does not want to have a long-term deal with Kobe, or they don't value it at the same way the family does. Right now, I still think maybe down the line they can get back together and have a deal hammered out. And, throughout this day, more information has come out. It just seems more and more unlikely. And that's too bad. You know, it's just kind of sad that whatever the number was for Nike to preserve Kobe Bryant's legacy was just a number that was too high for them. On a lighter topic, let's talk about the Maniere Jordan 3 drop and the L's we're going to take. So the release process was announced, and it was 3 parts. There was a women's only raffle, which was in-store only by appointment, where you had to show your ID and there would be a size confirmation check. There's a general raffle, and then an online drop. For the women's only raffle, you saw the usual kind of responses that you would expect to see on Twitter or Instagram. And it's kind of natural for the mind to kind of think of the exceptions to the rules that are put in place here. You saw the usual, what about men's rights, or that's discriminatory. It's not discriminatory if there's also a general raffle. Or, stuff like, how are they going to be enforcing this? And then the usual jokes like, what if you identify as a woman? One response I got was, I'll bet anything in the world New York City Looper is going to fly out to the location in makeup and women's clothes and say they identify as a female. This kind of stuff is good for Twitter jokes, but it would be kind of sad if someone, actually did it. Just picture you're scrolling Instagram and on, Harlem Reseller has a dude who looks like Lee dressed in drag walking into social status. That guy'd be roasted for days. So a lot of that stuff, for all these exceptions, just assume that a decent person working at one of these stores knows what the right thing to do is. If some guy shows up, dressed in drag like SpongeBob, looks obviously like they're a looper or a reseller, and they want to enter, a decent person's going to tell them to F off. If someone else says, hey, I'm trans and my driver's license hasn't updated yet, and they look like they're telling the truth, they don't look like a reseller in drag, then sure, we'll enter you into the raffle. Like, that was a response really to every one of these exceptions that people were thinking of. Just assume that a decent person would do the decent thing. As for the raffle itself, a couple people told me that women could enter whatever size they wanted. So if you were able to go in there, they didn't really do a size confirmation check. Are you going to ask a woman to take her shoes off, put it on the counter, and then you're going to stick your hands in there to look at the tag? No, it's kind of gross. And the raffle process would be impossibly long then. So for the women's raffle, I saw a lot of winners on Twitter. So it seemed like if you were able to go to these locations and enter, if you're a woman, you had a really good chance to win. My other point was about this women's only raffle is, if you're a woman and you're looking for, a men's size 6, or, that's a woman's size 7.5, are you really worried about the man on, Twitter or Instagram who's looking for a men's size 12? And this is same as the opposite. If you're looking for, like myself, looking for a men's size 12, am I really concerned that a lot of the size 6.5 men's went to women in store? No, I'm not. It's like, I don't care. We're totally different sizes. Really, the only concern here is if you're a reseller who's just trying to buy any size. And for, the big question here is how is stock allocated? How much stock is given to in-store for that women's raffle, for the general raffle, and how much is left for the online drop? Is the online drop just going to be leftovers, or is it going to be a strong allocation like Union was? We've been told that there's inclusive sizing, but really the same was said about off-white 4s. And even in those, the women's size 13.5, which is, my men's size 12, is pretty rare. So That is a question everyone wants to know, and that's not on Maniere, that's on Nike. Nike's the one who produces these. And no matter what they'll say as inclusive sizing, they said the same thing on Off-White 4. If they didn't make them, we're not going to get them. Especially for, I've seen like Livestock and other stores might possibly get these. And we'll see, most of the time what happens is the other stores will get, up to size women's 11, and that's it. And really your only chance is at Maniere itself to get these bigger sizes. But today I did see some general raffle winners, and I did see a lot of bigger sizes. So, things are looking decent there, that they're actually available. And what that shows is that James Whitner has shown a lot of care into this drop, that he's thought about it very carefully and thoroughly. I said on Twitter that the market situation has probably put more scrutiny on these Jordan drops than ever before, because all eyes are on them. How are you going to release it? If he did the same thing as Marcus and made some bullshit raffle with 0 winners, Nike's already shown that they don't want to deal with bad publicity anymore with the whole devil shoe thing. So that's why I said that I had always assumed that these shoes would be released fairly. I assume some pairs are going to be available through the back door. That's kind of always there. But in the circles I travel in, I've seen some chatter about that, but not like trophy rooms. Already it's already been a better drop than trophy rooms. We actually got real announced details before the drop, way before the drop. We got real winners on the timeline. Trophy room had 0 winners. And these general raffle winners have been going out in batches kind of all day, it seems like. So the hope for the shoe that you have is, obviously, the hope is you win on the general raffle. After that, the hope is there's enough stock left for online drop. Then the hope is that it's a union-like drop where bots are killed. Bots had a good time with the footside drop recently with the Hyper Royals. So if it's a fair drop like that, then the hope is you don't get stuck in the queue forever. Then you better hope that you picked a size that is still available and lets you check out, and you don't get the stock problems issue. If you change size, then you hope that you can still check out, your secondary size. And then finally, the hope is that you finally get that order confirmation. So if you want this shoe, you got to go through all those hoops to get to that final step. I hope you win. Sneaker Guy of the Week. The Sneaker Guy of the Week is, this Ultra Boost would have been a huge hit in 2017 guy. You remember the days of the glory days of Ultra Boost in 2016, 2017? When Kanye would wear normal clothes and he jumped in those white Ultra Boosts and everyone needed them, but they weren't available anywhere. So, of course, Adidas flooded the market because the demand was there. But, everyone kind of collectively decided, hey, you don't really need more than 2 pairs of Ultra Boosts. And the demand plummeted as the supply increased. So cut to now, Adidas is trying to, reclaim some of that 1.0 glory. And every couple of months, they'll drop something that reminds you of that era. So, some Oreo DNA Ultra Boost will come out that looks kind of reminiscent of a 1.0 from that consortium era. And everyone has this nostalgia for it, where, either the nostalgia was from how much you were able to resell it for, or just the fun that you had of wearing it and how comfortable it felt. So, Sneaker Guy of the Week will quote tweet a Soul Links tweet about some Oreo DNA 5.0 Ultra Boost that will eventually go on sale, and they will reminisce about the resale good times. Man, how these would have been bangers in 2016. So this Ultra Boost would have been a huge hit in 2017, guy. You are the Sneaker Guy of the Week.
Hey, StockX. This is Knackley from Discovery Bay, and my question to you is, if you could go back in the sneaker community, when in time would you go? I love your show, man. Keep up the great work. I love listening to it.
Hey, Knackley, thanks for the question. I really think now is the best time to really be in the sneaker community, really. If you look back at it, like I said in the last podcast, 2016, 2018, that was like the botting golden age. So if you're coming from this in terms of botting, that's probably the best time. But for everyone else, that wasn't that great of a time. 2012 to 2015 wasn't that bad. There was a lot of Jordan retros out there back then, and then even went on sale. So if that was your thing, and you could get them cheap, so that was not that bad. But overall, I don't really have nostalgia for back in the day. There's a lot of people that live in nostalgia. Back in the day often sucked, and what happens with just how human memory works is no one remembers the shitty stuff, and everyone remembers the stuff that you had fun with. And that's kind of by evolutionary design, really. You don't want to have, memories of trauma and that kind of stuff. But stuff like camping out, I never did any of that stuff. Or forums and Nike Talk and kind of haggling with people. I never had fun with that either. Facebook groups, those are all still things that people can still do. Well, but it's just never the thing for me. So now there's lots of stuff, fun stuff in the community that you can do. There's Twitter, there's podcasts, there's Instagram if you're into like sneaker photography, or YouTube. That stuff just wasn't as easy to do back then as it is now. But if I really had to answer, I would probably say mid 90s. 95 is, or when Jordan 11s came out. Retro Jordan 1s had retroed in like 94 or so and were sitting. Resale barely existed. Like everyone was just vibing, I guess. So if I had to answer, I would say mid 90s, but overall, I still think now is the best time.
Hey StockX, I just wanted to know what your favorite GR releases this year have been so far, and if you have any tips for an aspiring sneaker writer.
That was a question for Max. Max, thanks for sending in the voice message. For GRs, there's this Presto I really liked, the Crimson Hawaii-ish one. Probably wasn't a GR, but it's probably sitting. I like the Air Max. It's not an Air Max. The Air Structure that just came out too. Even that, it's like maybe I can wait for it to go on sale. Maybe it's limited. I did want that Tuned Max one, the one that Skepta had remixed into an Air Max 97. I also bought an Air Max 2 Plus. The issue with these Air Max Plus 2s and 3s is they're a little too expensive. They're like $170, $180 US. It's like $250, $240 Canadian. Air Force Ones I always like. Put an orange swoosh on it, put a navy blue swoosh on it, black swoosh, whatever. Those ones are always good. The 2002R New Balance, there's two types. There's one with the mesh at the toe box. That's what like the Slahy shoes like. That one I wear a lot. There's another version where it's just more leather and suede here. And I think I would probably prefer the mesh one because it just makes it a more breathable shoe. So those are good GRs that I liked. As for sneaker writer tips, my number one tip is people don't like to read. So write with that in mind. Write short articles or blog posts. Often people want to write these long form blog posts or whatever, and it's got this giant long intro, and really the thing that you're saying is really in the middle somewhere, because you're writing it for a general audience. Like you're writing it as if your mom's going to read it. Write it as if your mom's not going to read it, and go right to that middle part. So take the main point that's in the middle and put it up top, and then start from there. That's my number one tip. That's because it's kind of like how I talk on this podcast. I assume you kind of know what I'm saying. If you don't, you can always let me know, and I don't mind explaining stuff. But instead of being like, this is what a brick means, I'd rather just assume that you know what a brick means. But overall, blogs are kind of dead. Things went to podcasts and YouTube and stuff like that. In terms of writing, there's a lot of newsletters out there now. But it's a good time to, try stuff and innovate, I think. The other tip is, you got to have a point of view and you got to be consistent. That's one of the things that I've always had from the very beginning, from when I first started my Twitter account, when, I didn't really care who was following, who was reading. I just put my thoughts out there. I put my jokes out there, that kind of stuff. And I just stayed consistent at it. There was a question from Alex talking about Pharrell stock versus Bad Bunny stock. The audio was kind of low and I couldn't figure out how to tweak it up a bit, and it was cut off from the beginning. So I apologize for that. But the question was basically about how Adidas can produce so many Pharrell NMDs that nobody wants versus so few Bad Bunny shoes that everybody wants. Really, the answer here is that they're just at two different points at their kind of product cycle. The Pharrell line is just a few years old now. The very first Hue drop, the yellow pair that dropped, those are super limited. Like there's probably, 500-600, less than 1,000. Every store that had them had maybe a size run. And that was probably the same with how these Bad Bunny ones came out recently. And Bad Bunny's only had 2 shoes with Adidas, whereas Pharrell's probably at 40. I don't know how many it's been. So those first drops are supposed to be impossible to build the hype. If Bad Bunny dropped 60,000 pairs, they'd probably sit. No one would want them. Why do you want a shoe that's sitting? Maybe you can get it on sale later, and then there you go. You don't get a third shoe. So you can't just do that on the first or 2 shoes. You just the way the game works is you got to make it so nobody can get it.
Hey StockJig, Sam from San Francisco here. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the StockX cease and desist scout thing. Interested to hear your opinions there.
Thanks, Sam, for the question. So in case if you don't know, Scout is this inventory application. It's like an app or a site that mostly used by power sellers to replace kind of their own spreadsheets. The power feature in it really is that it can sync with your StockX account, your GOAT, and even read your emails, and kind of have everything, have a real-time view of your inventory, the market price. You could even like list it on both platforms. Well, previously you could list it on both platforms. Since the last time I looked at it, it's probably added a bunch of more stuff, but I haven't kept up. So some disclosure here. I've tried out Scout. It's a very well done app. I don't actually use it. I just decided it wasn't for me. But from what I saw, that it was really well developed. Like Silicon Valley startup based good. Probably even better than some of the stuff I've seen. Other disclosure, some of the Scout devs follow me on Twitter. I follow them, but I don't know any of them personally, nor have I like DM'd with any of them or anything like that. So, like I said, I tried it out. I thought it was really well done, but ultimately I didn't use it. I just stopped because I really don't sell enough that requires it. A simple spreadsheet is good enough for me. The other reason, I personally don't feel comfortable giving access to my StockX and GOAT and letting it read all my email. And even those features, it's up to you if you can decide if you want to give them access to that stuff or not. But without it, it's a much more manual process. For example, if you sync with your email, as soon as you buy something from a store, it'll read that email and then put it in your inventory in your Scout. Whereas, that is a process to do if you've got to go manually update your spreadsheet, which people always get behind on. But one of its premium features was this ability to list a shoe from your inventory on both GOAT and StockX. And if your shoe is sold on one of the platforms, it would delete the listing on the other platform, which is super useful for power sellers that have hundreds of listings and they don't want to accidentally sell the one shoe that they have on both and then have to figure out which one to cancel. So it does all this by making API requests to each platform. API request is basically just the server, the computer talking to another computer saying, hey, I want to list this. And then the other service, the API returns saying, okay, listed. So when you log into your Scout, it probably makes an API request. Maybe it does it every half hour. Maybe it does it every 10 minutes, whatever it does. For every user, it's making multiple requests to both StockX, GOAT, your email provider, etc. So when you add it up, that adds up to a lot of requests. And Scout isn't just some guy's fun project on the side. It's a company with funding and probably thousands of users. I personally don't know how many users they have. I know they have thousands on their Discord active. So, but I don't know if it's 10,000 total because not every user uses their Discord, I guess. So I'm just gonna say 5,000 as just a simple round number of a large number. So I don't know if they personally really do have 5,000 sellers, users on their platform or not. So StockX sent a cease and desist letter and basically banned Scout from syncing to their servers to using this API, which basically stops all those 5,000 plus users from selling on StockX through Scout. So the question is, why would StockX want to do this? Don't they lose money by doing this? Especially since these are the power sellers selling on their platform who are selling a lot. Okay, let's go through some of the issues here. The first issue is StockX does not have a public API. They have some version of an API, and I know there was a beta program at one point where you could get a key, but there is no publicly available API at the moment. You just can't go to stockx.com/API and there's the full documentation. There's instructions on how to sign up. There's just none of that. If you Google it, you'll find a bunch of unofficial stuff that people have either cobbled together. So I don't know if Scout was scraping the stuff using unofficial ones or if they were using the official one beta version. Whatever it is, whatever terms of service that were in this beta program, I can guarantee you thousands and thousands of users is probably a violation of whatever the terms of service were. There's some story about the Court of Appeals recently said that scraping is legal, but it can still be a violation of a site's terms of services. So that's the first issue is terms of service. Second one is the server instability that this created. I know servers and stuff is way easier now to scaling servers with AWS and things like that than it was, 10, 15 years ago before AWS. But it's not nothing. It's not free. Having, say, 5,000 users sync with StockX servers is going to cause some instability. And StockX has to pay for that scaling out of the server infrastructure. Basically, having 5,000, say they synced every day at 9 a.m. or whatever it is, how does StockX know if that is just Scout syncing or if that is a DDoS happening to them, from somewhere? But the main issue here is money and who owns the data. Like I said, Scout is not just some guy's fun project that they killed. This is a company with, seed funding and stuff like that. And it's possible they were paying $0 for the StockX API. And so StockX is over here saying, hey, these guys are causing server instability. They're making profit off it. They got seed funding. Why are we helping them? Sure, StockX is skimming sales on all those power sellers. What if Scout has 20,000 users, 50,000, 100,000 users? Like, what is the projection here? Does the profits that you make from the skimming of those listings from those power sellers offset the cost of servers? I don't know, but whatever the graph is, at some point it probably doesn't make sense. But really, it's the first part I mentioned. Like, if StockX owns this data, they want to make money off it. StockX probably has a bunch of, hundreds of thousands of regular Joe sellers, like, Mickey Mouse sellers like myself, who combine, when you add them all up, are still higher than power sellers. So whatever they're making off these power sellers, it's not enough to sell out and give access to your data completely. If you own something and someone's building a profitable company off of something that you have for free, you're going to have an issue with it. Really, the two sides should get together and StockX should just charge them for an API access. Come out and say, hey, this is how much it costs monthly per user or whatever it is. And does that make sense for Scout? If they have funding, if it makes sense for them, if the users demand it, sure, why not? Then Scout could charge more, whatever it is. Really, I think they should work this out because it doesn't make that much sense to just, do away with it completely. But I do understand why StockX killed them. 2 extra side notes on this one. There was actually some burner account almost saying basically what I've kind of said here, but in kind of more of a dickish way, I guess. And it just totally looked like it was reading like it was coming from someone who worked at StockX, even though they claimed they weren't. And they had claimed that Scout was using this API access without previously talking or engaging with StockX at all. The other funny side note that I thought of was that I even mentioned previously on this podcast. One of the Scout guys, Anton, I think, when they were looking for developers, he sent out a bunch of tweets saying, one of the pitches was meaningful work. I'm reading from Anton's tweets here. Most sneaker Twitter work is reactive, not proactive. You're in a never-ending cat and mouse game where you have to make engineering and product sacrifices to loopholes around a site's security. He's talking to bot developers here who are trying to bypass foot site security stuff. Okay, back to the tweet. No amount of great engineering will ever allow your product to be stable and self-sufficient. At Scout, the overall experience of our product isn't tied to an external service. All your work goes towards building a beautiful and functional product that won't disappear overnight. So it is kind of true what he's saying there, but really at Scout, it seems like we're still exploiting endpoints on StockX and not paying for it. So I just thought it was ironic considering these tweets were out, a few months ago, and now it seems like they were exploiting endpoints on StockX for their own gain, just like bot devs. That's the show. We'll see you next time. Rate me 5 stars, motherfuckers.